Good evening, and welcome to the Family Life Curriculum Public Participation. We're gonna get started here, and I'm gonna pass it to Dr. Luna Vetter, who's going to take this one.
Thank you. Tonight we're here for the public presentation on the Family Life Curriculum. I would like to introduce Ms. Emily Vaughn, who is our Director of Teaching, Learning, and Innovation, who is going to present on behalf of the committee.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be with you this evening and happy to share some updated information about Family Life and where we are, and to give you some information about what this will look like for our teachers and students this year. So, just to let you know, since the last time we were together in the spring, our updates and the most recent information. I know the last time we were together, we were looking at the resources that were available for our teachers to create the curriculum. And as you know, we have selected a textbook for that team to write and to use for writing the curriculum. And a group of teachers were serving on that curriculum writing team. And then we also organized a group of community stakeholders that served to provide feedback and review the materials that that team was creating. This team brought together their own expertise and areas of expertise to look at that through their own lens, whether they are a parent, a community health member, so all kind of coming together and looking at that, providing that feedback back to our teachers and working through that. And then making sure that finished curriculum had alignment not only to the standards but also to the legislation. And so I'm excited that we have some of our teachers who worked on that in the audience tonight, as well as some of our community stakeholders that were on our committee. So as you know, we've shared this process that we work from standards to students, and that's our curriculum writing process that we use in the district. And really, we're right here in these last three sections of what the work has been throughout the summer. So really making sure that we're connecting the standards through the content and the resources, and then being ready to create that resource and share it with teachers, and then getting that feedback and posting those resources for our families and students. So this is important to share exactly what that looks like as part of that public hearing that we will do every year. And so when we think about Family Life Curriculum, let's first start with the textbooks and the curriculum materials themselves. So the Family Life Curriculum obviously is designed to meet the state standards, but also the legislation. And we're doing that using the resources from the state's recommended textbook list. And the texts that we use are the McGraw-Hill digital student editions of two selections, one Teen Health and one to Glencoe Health. And it's important to note here that these are not the full textbook selections. You might recall from our opportunities in the spring that we reviewed those full textbook selections, and it was very much noted that the full textbook does not align to our standards. And so we worked with the textbook publisher to only use the resources that align with our standards. So they were able to work directly with the Tennessee standards and pull the resources in only those chapters and units that we needed. And that's what our teachers used to design the curriculum. So that was a great resource that we had access to for that curriculum writing purpose. So next, when we think about then how do we deploy that? How do we access that for our teachers and students? So we will be using that digital model that we shared in the spring. So all of that goes out digitally, since our students have one-to-one access with computers and technology. And that also allows us to have access to what we share with parents and able to lock that down. And then that becomes a guaranteed and viable curriculum that is set, and we have control over at the district level. And that gets approved by the instruction department and pushed out that way. The presentations include teaching notes, and those notes are then gone through and vetted to make sure that they are aligned with, again, both the standards and the legislation. And I'll show that to you in just a moment what that looks like. The textbooks that we use as a resource are not purchased for students. They're not purchased for teachers. They are, again, just as a resource. And and they are not going to be shared in any other way other than that. And so that is a little bit about the textbooks and materials portion. So this is what the students and teachers will see when the content is pushed out to them digitally. The first is an example of a slide that the teachers would use during a presentation. So it was just the content that's presented that aligns with the standard and the legislation. This happens to be on a trusted adult and what that means and what that looks like. But on the teacher's portion, the notes section, you would see that it is aligned to the standard and to the legislation, and it also includes teaching notes. And that's there to help the teacher understand what the content and curriculum is. So that would be available for every slide that is in the presentation for the teachers. And so that is important not only for us to go back and vet that we know it's in full alignment. Our committees have gone back to vet that, but it's also important for our teachers to know exactly the focus of that lesson for the day. So what does the schedule and the training look like? Because we know that's important for our families to know and understand, but we also know that the teaching schedule and training is important in order to meet the legislation requirements as well. So the family curriculum units will be taught in the second semester and no earlier than March 15th. So the 6th through 8th grade units consist of a 5-day unit, and in the high school it's a 7-day unit because they have a lot more standards than the middle grades do. The teachers responsible for delivering that curriculum will be trained. All teachers will be trained in that, and so that we'll be doing that on the staff development days of January 3rd and February 8th. And so it's important so that those teachers have time to look at that, get a good understanding of what's expected of them, and then be able to come back and ask questions, be able to rehearse, practice, and be familiar with that content. So also to make sure that we have ample opportunity for parents to look at the resources and to decide if this is in the best interest of their family. This will be available for preview beginning in January, which gives ample time for that 30-day opt-out. Parents have access to also look at the alternate units of instruction. So one thing we wanted to provide for all of our families is not only what does the curriculum for family life look like, but if you choose not to participate in that, what will your child be doing during that time? Because we want that time to also be very educationally focused and meaningful for students, and not just something else that they're doing that would be perceived as a negative consequence. So we do want that to make sure that our parents have access to both of those materials and resources, so they will be able to see both of those things beginning in January. Parents at that same time will begin to see what the opt-out process is, and those will be posted when the preview becomes live. So also, earlier you saw what the teachers would see and the students will see, but during the preview, parents will access both things. So they will actually be able to see the teaching notes, what the students see, what the teachers see. So they'll have access to everything during the preview, because we think it's very important for them to have access to everything that the teachers have access to, so they have an opportunity to make a great decision for their family. So what are the next steps between now and January to make sure we're prepared to roll this out for our community? So first, we're still working on those alternate units of instruction. We just finished up all of the family life curriculum, so it's time to begin the alternate units of instruction. We're still processing a little bit of that 9th grade family life, making sure it's polished and ready to go. And then making sure we're really ready to train the teachers on January 3rd. Making sure we have the right folks in the room, we have the right message, that we know that they understand the importance, that they understand the context of the training and what is expected of them. And then being sure that the public review is ready for January. And then most importantly on February 8th, when those teachers return, it is kind of like a rehearsal. So we know that this curriculum can be difficult to teach. And so we want teachers to be comfortable with the content. We want them to know what to do when they're asked difficult questions, how to respond to that. Those are things that are going to be very important for our teachers to be knowledgeable of. So that February 8th time is the time to be able to ask questions. become comfortable with the conversations and really know what to do when they get those types of questions. And so that is a process that we'll be prepared for on that day. So those will be the next steps that we're working on from now until that time. And I'm sure between now and then we'll have a chance to update you on that progress as well. So that is the overall view of Family Life curriculum and what we expect to have for this year. Are there any questions? Yes, sir?
Okay, I think I sort of know the answer. The day-to-day lessons for the 9th grade, is that because that's their first year in the high school and they're sort of lost?
Well,
I have a grandson that's a 9th grade.
that we call that 9th grade because they take a course called, it's a wellness course, and most of the time that happens for 9th grade students. So that's the course they take then. Occasionally it could be a student out of the 9th grade, depending if they're transferred in and they don't have that credit. But that is the year that they typically take that credit.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You're going to make the curriculum materials available to the parents.
Yes, sir.
How is that being released to them? Is it sent home in a packet? Do they have access to it?
No, sir, it's actually going to be all online. That's going to be the easiest way to access that. If someone doesn't have access online, we'll make sure they have the materials, however it's easiest for them. They need to come in and view them. But actually we have a parent hub with all of our curriculum materials on there now. And so we will post them to the curriculum hub there. We'll announce it through our messenger for all parents to know when it's released. And what we will have is a day-to-day system where they can see what it looks like on day one, all the materials for day one, day two, and so it'll be that way in an organized fashion, so they are able to look at the materials in that way.
My question is probably not going to be relevant, but the legislators is the one that actually brought this into fruition.
Yes, sir, this is part of the legislation. We've always had standards for these, for this curriculum, but there are legislative pieces that are covered here that are not standards.
Okay, are they, how many of those are teachers?
Can you rephrase that question? I'm not sure I
How
understand.
many of those legislators that actually brought this into fruition, teachers, or do you know? You
I
don't
do
know?
not know.
The reason why I asked the question is that the reason why teachers are upset at what's going on in the world today is because the teaching is being taken away from the teacher. The teacher has for years, for hundreds of years, done a great job. And you guys still do a great job. And it bothers me that the legislators are stepping in trying to take over your role in the classroom. And that's not what we put them in Nashville to do.
A couple, maybe questions. You mentioned difference in standards between high school and middle school.
Yes, sir.
And the standards that had to be taught or reached, but they're not graded standards, just a matter of teaching the standards that the state's requiring.
There are health and wellness standards that are 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade standards.
Right, where the students graded on those standards.
There are standards that are graded, yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, there are also legislative requirements within the law that are not standards. And so those are implemented into the curriculum, and they're meshed into the units themselves. But what is graded are the standards themselves.
And those grades would affect their overall grade point average.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the children that opt out of this program, the options that they are gonna have to select from, have they been determined yet?
So they will also be the health and wellness standards. And so that's why it's really important for us to make sure that the alternate units are also educationally purposeful, because they are grade bearing, especially in 9th grade, credit bearing courses. And so that we want to provide equal opportunities for students to do similar work.
Thank you.
So this is a topic that a lot of parents would like information about. So one question I have is, in the instruction, if a student asks a question that's off topic or off standards, what's the direction for the teachers in that?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a lot of conversation about that, so I'm glad you asked that. So we're working very closely right now with the team, especially this has been a really hot topic with our community team too. And so, that is something we're gonna practice. And so right now, we've discussed having a conversation with students about, this is a question that we think is a great question for you to ask your parents or to ask a trusted adult, right? So we really think that phrase trusted adult is very critical and important in this particular context because it is really heavy throughout the curriculum. And so that trusted adult piece is really in every single strand, every single grade level. And so the trusted adult piece will be kind of the first thing we teach because I think we'll be laying that groundwork when we do have those difficult questions. And we also can begin to thread those questions that are asked multiple times into the curriculum if they align to a standard, right? And so if there are questions that are asked that do not align to a standard, or if we know are things that we cannot teach because there are things within the legislation that do say this is not to be taught, then those are conversations that we know we can't have. And so it's critical for us to also know that our students have to know where they can get information. And so whether that's a conversation with a counselor or it's a conversation directly with that student to say, do you know where you can get that information? Do you have a trusted adult? But it's not for us to give if that's not what the content says for us to be.
You mentioned your community team. Who are they and what's their mission?
Well, I think you're probably gonna meet some of them tonight. I think they're gonna take a moment and speak during the community moment. Ms. Hayes, did you have a question?
Cut off on that one.
I want them to introduce themselves.
I have a question about when it is time of year it's being presented. Is it being presented in the second semester after March 15th because it's the first year of implementation? Or will it be that every, is that always gonna be?
It will probably always fall in that way, and primarily for a couple of different reasons. First and foremost, we're a pretty mobile district, right? And so, we're pretty settled by that point in the year, and it's difficult to do an opt-in early in the year and opt-out early in the year, and then try to track, where's everybody, did they opt out, making sure we get that part correct. And if we hold it until January, we release the curriculum, we know it's kind of settled, and then we make sure that at that point, everyone gets the opportunity to have the curriculum if they want it, or these other lessons, then it just is a cleaner way to do it, the committee felt. Also, within the scope of the curriculum, there are so many standards within the health and wellness. It pretty much fills the year anyway. It also gives us a really good opportunity to train the teachers in January every year, because typically those first training days are so full in the first semester. And stressful, that we can really rely on that second semester of training every year. So we're trying to set it up so we know that we have consistency each year. We know every year we're gonna train, because teachers change so often. We're gonna train every year at this point, we're gonna teach at this point, and we'll just follow that pattern. And adjust if that, if we need to adjust.
This may have been asked or answered. I mean, is it the curriculum that you've put together as a
Yes,
whole? Is that available to be seen now, or when will that be available?
It will be available to the public in January, probably mid-January. And our hope is as soon as we get the units cleaned up, we will release it to the board to view, and then to do the public in January. Any other questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn.
All right, so we were just discussing, we have some people that signed up that would like to make some comments. And Steve Van Kirk will be our first.
Where's the sheet? Some people would like to sign up, please.
Anthony, do we have another sheet we can? start, while we start with the.
Okay, this is the first time you've done that.
All right, well, there's only two on here, let me just write them. So after Mr. Van Kirk, then we have Tina Dixon, and so if anybody beyond those two want to sign up, if you'll sign up, it will be right after, these two speak. And so we have a timer, you can see, everybody's got 3 minutes to address the board on this topic of family life. Okay.
Thank you. My name's Steve Van Kirk. I was part of the community team. I'd like to first thank the board because I think it was a super wise decision that you guys made to kind of put the brakes on and let this process pan out, to locally develop this curriculum. I think that there's a ton of effort that was put into this, and I think the results will speak to that. So hats off to you guys for making that decision. Also, I wanted to just say thank you to Ms. Vaughn and Ms. Doty and Ms. Kendall. They were a quality team. I want you to know that they did what they said they were gonna do. They invited me to be a part of that team. If they said there's gonna be a meeting June 6th at 3 o'clock at Central Services South, there was a meeting June 6th, 3 o'clock, Central Services South. If they said we're gonna provide you curriculum to review, they provided it. And it wasn't a token effort. When I submitted my feedback, pardon me, the 6th grade curriculum was kind of the baseline for 6th, 7th, and 8th. So when you submit your feedback for the 6th grade curriculum, by the time you see the 7th grade curriculum, you're already seeing some of the changes that you had suggested in the 6th grade. So the community team feedback wasn't just a token effort. I mean, I saw my comments being considered and implemented. Maybe not everyone, I'm not quite sure. We did not have access to the curriculum writers themselves. We would submit written feedback, but it absolutely was not just a token effort. And I think that's worth stating. I also think, I hear where you're coming from, sir, about teachers needing to teach, but I think as a parent too, there's a lot that goes on in a classroom these days. Teachers going off script, and personal agendas, not necessarily saying CMCSS, I'm not pointing any fingers, I'm speaking generally. And as a parent, I would take great comfort in knowing this is the curriculum that has been put together. They let me review all of it and make my own decision before they taught it. And no one's gonna go off script. The teachers, when they're trained, I have been assured by Ms. Vaughn and others that the teachers are gonna be very well trained and not be ad-libbing, going off script, etc. And we've had this discussion too amongst the groups. At this point, it's all about how it gets taught. It's very abstinence-based, but I can teach you abstinence 2 different ways. I can show you people who have lived it and their stories, or I can roll my eyes and say, yeah, right, abstinence. And then go on and teach you all about contraceptives, right? So I'll stop there, but at this point, it's all about how it's taught. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Sheena Dixon, and I'm actually one of the other community members that helped with this curriculum. I wrote a script because I wrote a script. When I first heard about the new family life curriculum during one of the community engagement workshops, I was very concerned. When I hear the words family, I wasn't sure how the state would dictate that word, so kind of Mr. Garland over there. But I will say Clarksville Montgomery County is a very unique community. It's very diverse and has all types of demographics. So family could mean so many different things to different people. As a single mother, my family looks a little bit different from your typical family. So I wanted to make sure that the school system had my daughter in mind when she sat with her classmates of different backgrounds and didn't feel excluded from this term. While working through this curriculum, I think that this team did a really good job of keeping terms inclusive, but also staying within the guidelines of the state and the legislation and the laws. Now I have a truly deep feeling just of comfort with this curriculum. I feel comfortable with my daughter sitting through it. She sat with me through me going through it. My whole family was involved. My brother-in-law, he's a physician's assistant when I was on vacation in Washington, because we did do this over the summer. This was, we weren't getting paid or anything. It's just something you have to be passionate about. And he was like, can you guys stop talking about this? Because this is just very awkward talking about children's reproductive systems. I get it, it's uncomfortable, but this is a good curriculum because a lot of parents don't teach their kids these facts. In fact, I learned to help with some professionals in the group as well. This curriculum has everybody in mind and input from the community, as well as those professionals, which I think is very important. And I'm just grateful to work with this group and this curriculum for the kids. And even though I started off wanting to opt out of this curriculum because I just wasn't really sure, and that's why I wanted to be involved, I feel very comfortable, and I definitely want my kid to be involved in this. And I'm a ninth grader too, so just high school is very different. And I think it's naive to think that our kids don't know what we don't think they know. So it's best to learn from the state standards and make sure a professional went through it. And this curriculum definitely touched all those bases, and I feel very comfortable with it. And I hope that everybody opts their kids into it. Look at the curriculum, put your feedback in there, whatever else, but just be open-minded to even look at it. Because honestly, I was not. I just wanted to opt out of it. I'm like, this is ridiculous. But looking at the curriculum, it's really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Brewer.
Hi, I am Dr. Kristen Brewer. I am on the community committee as well. I don't have a kid, but I have my PhD in public health education with a focus on sexual health education. So this was really an exciting thing for me to have the benefit of doing over the summer. And I do want to start off by saying that you all have an amazing, dedicated group of teachers and educators and people that are working at, I don't even know what your jobs are, but you're amazing at them. You can tell that you're passionate and really focused on what's best for our students. So that was really cool. And the process in general was really neat to see. It was cool to see a community take a unique approach to a very specific issue, because not every student in every community necessarily is in the same place with this information, especially when it comes to sexual health, especially when it's a taboo and kind of stigmatized topic. So the approach that was taken was really unique in that it considered what was best for this community, which is really important when you're trying to develop something to address specific community needs. It is a great blend of giving students information that they'll need one day without giving them permission to do anything. And it is through the lens of abstinence only. It does align with state standards. It's great information that has been vetted by experts, as well as through the state requirements and state standards. So it's a great comprehensive view, and I think, like Tina said, to opt your kid into it and then to talk to them when they get home and after they've learned this, to kind of discuss how that fits into your worldview is my biggest suggestion there for parents. The crosswalk was really interesting. I've never seen that before, so I do not envy the job that the curriculum developers have to try and align the state standards with the legislation. That is very difficult. I also don't know the number of teachers that wrote that, but I would guess it's probably not a lot. So they did a phenomenal job with that. The feedback process was really cool because it allowed for an open exchange of ideas through an I like, I wonder. As far as our feedback, it wasn't just, oh no, don't do this instead. It really kind of allowed for, I think, a respectful exchange of ideas too. So that was really cool to see and be a part of. The content itself is really focused, it can be focused broadly. For example, when talking about trusted adult or consent or how to say no, that doesn't just apply to sexual health, that applies to other risky behaviors as well, such as alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. So it's really great information that students can have regardless of whether or not it's just focused through the lens of sexual health. I really like the inclusion of training the educators too, because oftentimes in research, when you're talking to teachers who teach these topics, they're not specifically taught how to teach sexual health, so they feel uncomfortable teaching that, and they're worried about things like state legislation. So to have that training, I think is really important too. And that timed out perfectly, so thank you.
Thank you. Karen England?
Good evening, and thank you. I didn't know that this was going to be considered the public hearing that TCA 49-6-1302 talks about, and I find it difficult to fulfill that requirement when you don't have any of the curriculum or resources here. Two places in Tennessee law it's very clear that the community, not just parents of students who have access to a portal, but the public, have the right to talk about, to share our concerns, everything about the curriculum. A select group over here that have been handpicked have gotten to see the curriculum and are talking about how great it is, so I don't know why at the public hearing we aren't able to see it. So I want to talk about a couple of things. I'm going through the slide presentation, and first of all, forgive me, and for anyone that's new, it's really hard for me to trust when all of this is done in the dark, and when I had to expose to you all that you had spent months planning curriculum based on a law that never made it out of committee. So forgive me if I'm wondering and not believing everything you say when you build a whole curriculum, 3 curriculums, around something that wasn't the Tennessee law and actually violated law. So a couple of questions, like on this teacher's note, and this is what I'd like to see in the curriculum. When it talks about trusted adults or people whom you know personally, not online, it will be important to point out the difference of an online medical or mental health provider versus an online chat room. Is that, hey, Planned Parenthood is a great resource and that's where you should go? Again, without the curriculum or teacher guides, how are we gonna know what any of that says? That's the point in law of a public hearing and to get community public buy-in. So there are plenty of things. We've talked before about standards, and the standards are a broad kind of lane, but the law is really clear. And there are several things that I'm not convinced are in Glencoe, and I have gone through Glencoe and Teen Health, and I don't know what, again, because I can't see it, but I'm gonna give you an example. In the state laws on family life, it mentions the word abstinence 14 times and the importance of abstinence. Standards mention it once. Oh, I'm sorry, twice. Marriage, it explicitly, in Tennessee law, in 5 different places, talks about the honor and respect of a marriage relationship. It's mentioned, the word marriage mentioned once in the standards. So there are a lot of laws that say you shall teach this that I'm just not convinced is going to be in the curriculum, because I've seen the Glencoe and Teen Health. And there are a lot of mandates that say you shall do this that are not in the curriculum. I'd like to see the curriculum.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wanted to sign up to speak that hadn't already had an opportunity to do so? Okay. I'll turn it back. Go.
Could you read the law about what we're allowed to say at the hearing? Is this the public hearing?
Well, this is the opportunity for the public to make comments, yes.
Okay.
Does the law say 3-minute minimum, the 3-minute maximum?
That was the amount of time that was allocated because we didn't know how many people were going to sign up to speak. So the law does not say it should be 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever.
I would think you'd want to hear everything that the public has to say.
Anyway, there was nobody else who signed up to speak.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. So at this point, we stand adjourned. We will reconvene at 6 p.m.
Even though the 35 were